Kevin, my brother, welcome to the Superhuman Life. How's it going?
It is going well, Frank. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm looking forward to diving deep and seeing where we end up because I don't know where we're going to go.
We never know where we're going to go. That's when I started this back in July of last year. I think I said it on the first podcast. I don't know where this is going to go. I don't know what this is going to lead to, but I'm going to do it. And that's, I think, what we're going to jump into today as well. You know, I wanted to start with a Tony Robbins quote. I mean, I'm a huge Tony fan. I know you probably are too, as well, being the space that you work in. But he has this quote that he's shared. He's not really super well known for it, but it's one that I think ties into your story. It's most people overestimate what they can do in a year, and they underestimate what they can do in 2 or 3 decades. And why I think that's so powerful and connects to what you and I are going to get into is I know just a handful of years, like you were completely different. A handful of years ago, you were a completely different person, different path of life, different goals, different visions, different everything. And now you have this incredible podcast, close to 500 episodes, multiple businesses with your partner. I'm going to get to all that stuff. But I want to go back a few years to kind of the beginning of this journey that you've been on. Let's kind of take people through that story of, you know, the bodybuilding and the girlfriend and what kind of opened up this whole new world for you with what you're doing now. So take us back there a couple of years ago and kind of one of those pivotal points.
Sure.
In the story.
Yeah, so I always talk about this during my speeches. Number one, if you're watching me, if you're listening to me, I want you to understand that because I am here, it actually means you can be here as well. Again, like I was always the guy who would see the podcaster or see the speaker and be like, oh, I can never be on stage. Because I am, you can, because I thought the same exact way as you did. So in 2015, like Frank alluded to, I was a completely different person. So I had the body of my dreams. I had just done a bodybuilding show. I was, you know, very, very lean, very, very muscular. I had a beautiful girlfriend. She was literally a model. I had a high paying job, anywhere from $70 to $100 an hour. I had a sports car. I had a new apartment. I had great friends. From the outside looking in, I was living the dream life, like a 25-year-old living the dream life, but I wasn't happy, right? I wasn't as happy as everybody thought I was, but I didn't really realize it because that was normal for me. So after my bodybuilding show, and Frank, I'm sure you can talk about this, my emotions were everywhere. My hormones were everywhere. I was depressed. I was insecure. I was in like kind of a bad place. And I wasn't being a great boyfriend. I wasn't bad, but I wasn't the man that I said I was going to be to this young lady. And she ended up leaving me. To this day, we're on good terms. And I think this is the best thing she ever did. Genuinely, she deserved better than who I was at the time. But when she left me, I had to take a look in the mirror for the first time and realize you're not confident, you're super insecure, and you put all of your external value into your body and into the things you can buy and how hot your girlfriend is. And that was painful for me. That was like really painful. I'm living in this nice 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment by myself. My bills just doubled because my girlfriend and I were splitting them. Work slowed down. So I was like, this was rock bottom for me. Now, unfortunately, my rock bottom story has a basement, but this is my initial rock bottom. So she leaves me and I have all of these, you know, realizations. So this is my first dip into personal development. Like I started doing positive affirmations. I started watching positive videos. Every night before I went to bed, I used to say, I am handsome, I am intelligent, I am worthy. And this year I'm going to make the most money that I've ever made my entire life. Now, unfortunately, Frank, I leaned on that last one a little bit too much. So 2016 starts, and I was a foreman for a construction company. We traveled up and down the East Coast of the United States, working on state and government buildings. I got promoted to a foreman in 2016. And the best way I can explain it is my life was kind of like a rock star life without any of the rock star benefits. So I lived in Massachusetts. And we worked predominantly in New Jersey. Okay. So that's like anywhere from 4.5 to 6 hour drive, depending on where you are. Every single week I was on the road. Every single week, crusty hotel to crusty hotel, working 3 to 11, then driving 5 hours home, hitting the gym at 4 a.m. because that's the only time I had, right? Like it was awesome because I was making really good money. So we get to the end of the year, the end of 2016. I'm sitting at my kitchen table, kind of similar to the table I'm sitting at here. And I'm getting ready to open up my pay stub. And my goal was to make 6 figures at 26 years old with no college degree before any of my friends. And I did. I opened that pay stub and I was on the road for 10 out of those 12 months. And I made the 6 figures that I wanted so badly. When I opened this pay stub, I realized that nothing changed. I was still insecure. I was still miserable. I still didn't have any confidence. So that night I went to bed. I was laying in bed and thinking to myself, it doesn't matter the car, the girlfriend, the body, what you did today, what you're doing tomorrow, what's in your wallet. What matters is up here. Like what matters is in your head, right? Your confidence, your reflection, the way you feel, the way you think about yourself. So I started a podcast called Hyperconscious, which we have since rebranded. But for most of my life, I lived unconsciously. So to me, hyperconscious was the polar opposite. And that's what I wanted to be. That's what I looked up to. That's what I respected. So the start of 2017, I start this podcast called the Hyperconscious Podcast, all about talking about deep stuff like we're going to do today. I want to know about your fears. I want to know about your insecurities. I want to know about your habits, your childhood, your traumas. I want to know about all that stuff. But my year started out very similar to the year prior, where I'm on the road every single week. And the thing that brought me so much money and made me feel valuable now took away from my dreams directly. It's very hard, as you know, to be a consistent podcaster, never mind when you're in a work van 7 hours a day driving, right? Like that's just not, it's not feasible. So for the first time in my life, I found like I located something that I enjoyed doing. I loved podcasting, but now I'm getting taken away every day, every week for work. And it just kept getting worse and worse. Like I would call out of work. I would leave the job early. The people that were working under me were miserable because I was leaving $500, $600, $700 on the table some days because I just didn't want to work. And if I didn't work, they couldn't either. I literally would have to be in New Jersey at 7 a.m. I would sleep in my bed in Massachusetts from 10 p.m. till 2 a.m. I'd wake up and drive 4.5 hours straight to the job site just so I could sleep in my bed for 3 or 4 hours. And on Friday, I did the opposite. I always drove home the night after we finished working. It didn't matter what time it was. I drove straight home from Virginia for 14 hours after working an 8-hour day because that's how miserable I was. So it got so bad. And this is the day, this is my rock bottom basement moment. This is the day that changed my life forever in the best ways and in rough ways also. We're in a crusty hotel room in New Jersey, and it's a cold winter morning, and I'm sitting at the edge of the hotel bed, and I'm lacing up these work boots, and I've done this hundreds of times before. And the best way I can explain it is there was 10 televisions on in my head at the same time, and every single one of them was on a different channel. One of them saying, you're stuck here. One of them is saying, you're never going to be able to make this kind of money again. What will your friends think? What will your parents think? Do you really think you can get another good job? Like, you're stuck here. And the biggest, most loud voice was saying, do you really think you could become a successful podcaster? Like, what makes you think you could do that? And I'm here sitting at the edge of the bed. Nobody knows where I am. You know, I'm 5 hours away from anybody who loves me. And I genuinely felt in that moment that the best thing for me to do would be to end my life. Because if I ended my life, I ended my parents' life. I ended the life of, you know, all this pain I had. But I'm thinking about my parents, and I'm thinking about my friends, and I have a tattoo on my arm that says never quit. So imagine the ambulance and the EMTs pulling up and seeing a kid with a tattoo that says never quit dead.
So I was there before.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, this has been my motto for a long time. And I think that's one of the reasons I'm still here, because I have such respect for resilience. I love people who are resilient, and I've always wanted to be resilient, right? And that's always been one of my superpowers. And I think I lost that in that moment. Now, I didn't kill myself, clearly, because I'm here. I texted my friend and the second host of the show, Alan, and I just told him, I said, hey man, I'm struggling. I'm dealing with some stuff. I feel stuck. I'm having some really bad thoughts. And he was there for me. He was there to talk me off of the ledge. He was there to put air into my sails and just give me the certainty and the support and the freedom to express myself. I left that job 3 or 4 months later. I went full-time into podcasting, full-time into speaking, full-time into coaching. Now we have several businesses, and you know, that day was one of the hardest days of my life. I'll never forget that. But I also realized in that moment that I need to be the person that I needed. Like when people DM me, I have to DM them back. It's not, I have to be there for the people that need me. Like I should have been there for the times that I needed myself. And now my life is completely different. Again, there's still days that suck. Like there are still days that suck. There are days that are hard. Not every day is a day of paradise, but my life is so much different than it was, 5 years ago. I hadn't ever read a book. Like I never read a personal development book. I thought Tony Robbins was a cult leader. That's how off the reservation I thought all this was. Personal development to me, it didn't matter. I didn't care about it. And now it literally is my everyday life. I do it every single day. I haven't missed a day in the last 4 years.
Yeah, that's amazing. So much I want to get to with the tips and strategies and things that you've used to really pull yourself out that we can, pass along. A few things I want to kind of unpack in your story there. Who were you growing up? And here's why I ask that question, because you talked about that moment where you had the dream body, like the thing that you worked so hard for. I'm sure it was 16, 20 weeks of preparation with, years of training leading up to that. But you still at that moment, like you had the body, the girlfriend, the car, the job, you still felt unsatisfied. And I relate so much to that. And I know so many people in the fitness world as well, the bodybuilding community. It's like we seek out this physical transformation with the dream of it transforming our lives. But when we don't do the inner work, we're left there with a body that we're happy of, but it's almost like the inside is even more broken. So when I asked about who were you growing up, like what was the driver behind bodybuilding, behind competing for you?
I think a lot of it was following in my dad's footsteps. My mom always used to tell me that my dad, and I at this point had never met my dad. So that's where like the story gets weird. But my dad was like a massive human being. Like she used to say, if you painted him green, he would be the Incredible Hulk. Like he was Lou Ferrigno big. And I inherited that. Genetics. But it's interesting when you inherit something from somebody you don't even know. And this person that you're supposed to love and look up to, I was the kid who was pissed off that he didn't know his father, that his father walked out on him. That's who I was. I was embarrassed. I was ashamed. I felt like I wasn't a man because I didn't have any mentors in my life. Like I was a pretty angry kid. And when I kind of figured out like how to get rid of that and, kind of release that, I think that I thought I'd be happy. But like you said, I never did any of the inner work. I tried to hate on my father less, but I never focused on loving myself more. And those are two completely separate things. And I had never meditated. I had never done any gratitudes. I had never done any journaling. So I think for me, it was a kid who thought the results would bring him happiness, genuinely.
Wow. Yeah. So closely tied into a very recent episode we had where we talked with Josiah. But yeah, I know for me, I pursued bodybuilding from a young age. I mean, not just competing, but bodybuilding for what it meant to me, because I was insecure from growing up, like out of shape, unconfident. So like I didn't have anybody in my family that was like a model of what a male should look like. So I sought out the superheroes, the professional wrestlers, or the bodybuilder. I was like, oh wow, these guys, like they have the physique and then they get the girl. Like, oh, so that must be the thing. But yeah, there were a handful of moments, like literally standing there. You can see the trophies here behind me. Like I'd be, winning a show, competing, like the night after, like the next day you look your best ever, doing photo shoot. And literally, like you said, like the lowest point of my life many times came in around those shows. So I'm just always kind of, fascinated with what drove people. So it sounds like it wasn't even like you saw like a possible future in bodybuilding. It was like, well, I have these genetics, but I'm more going to be like anger at my dad and use this as a way to kind of get back.
I didn't even want to do it. Somebody walked up to me in the gym and said, hey, you should do a bodybuilding show. And I was like, oh, you think I'd be good? And they're like, yeah, you're jacked. And it was like, yeah, I like food. I like pizza. I want to be able to, and I ended up meeting a really good coach. I don't know if you know Justin Randall, but he's up and coming in the bodybuilding world. Great coach, great guy. And he was like, Kevin, you can like win this. Like you could do some real damage if you set your mind to it. And I think I found in my mind a place where I fit in. Because like in the gym, you know how it is. There are people who are savages and there are people who aren't. Like I'm a savage. I want to get under the heavy weight. I want to do the reckless things. And I got respect for that. And I got credit for that in seeing my coach put up my pictures on his page for like, you know, what progress looks like. That I value that so much. And I love the fact that somebody just told me what to do. Like, eat this, weigh yourself, and take pictures. Like, all right, cool, I can do that. You know, like, that's fine. But I've always been in shape. I was accused of steroids when I was in high school by the other baseball teams that we played. Like, I've always been in better shape than most. So for me, it was like, it kind of seemed like the next logical step. And I only did one show, and I was like, look, this is not for me. This is not my lifestyle.
So bodybuilding, never again, or it just doesn't fit in the season that you're in
Never
right
again.
now? Never again.
Never again.
Okay. So follow up to that then. What if any, principles or mindset, like what did you take from that one prep that's carried over into what you're doing now? I think this can be very valuable for people.
I would say delayed gratification. And this is the beautiful thing. This bodybuilding prep I did was through my birthday, my girlfriend's birthday, 2 weddings, and the 4th of July. Now, I didn't cheat a single time on my diet except for one time. On the 4th of July, I had a couple handfuls of peanut M&Ms, and I literally texted my coach and said, hey, I screwed up. And he said, Kevin, I would literally drop you if, number one, you didn't tell me that, and number two, I knew that, like, you're not going to cheat the rest of your diet. Delaying gratification was so important because it made me realize, like, look, if I cheat on whatever it is, right? If it's your diet, that's one thing. But if it's you're not doing the thing that's going to move your business forward, guess what? Not only are you screwing up the people that you want to help, but you're really selling yourself short. You're really only hurting yourself at the end of the day. So for me, being an entrepreneur, if you cannot delay gratification, you are in trouble, because again, I didn't make $1 from this podcast for like 2 years, like 2 years of grinding, 2 years of learning, 2 years of honing my craft and, coaching and all this stuff. Like, I didn't make $1. If I didn't love this, I would have left a long time ago. I would have been like the majority of people who last 7 episodes and they say, like, yeah, you know what? The money just wasn't there. Okay, I understand. I've been there. So yeah, delayed gratification for me is like, that is a giant lesson.
Yeah, that's like stopping a bodybuilding prep after 7 workouts and just being like, oh, I'm not in shape yet. Right. Like, it's not going to be. I say this all the time. I think bodybuilding, it's in terms of, building discipline, building willpower, building delayed gratification. I don't think there's anything that any person can sign up for that's going to mold you and shape you with these, virtues and these characteristics. It literally is the only thing in the world that you willingly sign up for to, like, put yourself through misery and pain. Because I don't care who is out there, who you're coaching. If you're going to get absolutely shredded, peeled to the bone, diced to get on stage, you will suffer. You will have to go through discomfort. Now, there's ways about going it through an intelligent way, which will be less discomfort than some of the other strategies and practices that are out there. So why do you think, because what I see in the kind of the bodybuilding or fitness community, it's like you kind of see 2 types of people. You see people like yourself and, like me, and there's a whole world that kind of takes these skills and disciplines and then leverages them into something greater. But then you see a lot of people, like, stuck in that bodybuilding world, and they're never able to take, like, the disciplines and strategies and apply them to anything else. Why do you think that is? Do you think because with physical training, with bodybuilding, you kind of you're seeing the transformation take place in front of your eyes, whereas, like, in a business thing, like, you got to have faith and you got to, like, trust, knowing, like, okay, 6 months, a year, I'm not going to see anything. Like, why do you think a lot of people struggle with taking the disciplines from bodybuilding and applying it to another area of their life?
I think there's way more uncertainty, because you can look in the mirror. If my weight is down, something's probably working, or I hadn't had enough water. Right? Like, something's probably working. How do you measure success in a business? Like, if you didn't make money this month, there's nowhere to measure it against. So I think there's way more uncertainty. And this is the other thing too. I think that when it comes to bodybuilding, there's only so much to learn. Like, yeah, the nutrition part is huge, but what are you doing? You're doing squats, you're doing deadlifts, you're doing bench press, you're doing curls, you're doing shoulders. Like, you're doing the same things. It's a challenge against yourself. I think that's one part. And then I think and I don't want a blanket statement, but I think a lot of bodybuilders are inherently selfish. I was, right? I didn't care about, like, look, I don't care what you're eating. I have to have chicken and rice. Like, God forbid I have a slice of whatever it is you're having. I was selfish.
Well, I know in circles that I, was around, like, we prided ourselves on that. Like, it literally was a badge of honor. Like, no, I'm more selfish than you. Right. Like, type of thing. Like, I only do what Frank wants to do. I only eat at this time. I only it is this huge, like, badge of honor. But it's true. Like, you do have to be moderately selfish, or sometimes significantly selfish. So yeah, I don't want to make this all about bodybuilding. I just thought there were a few things there that I hadn't really heard you speak on, and I wanted to kind of give a little bit different perspective. So here we are. We're 2016. You hit that number, 6 figures, which I'm sure you kind of look back now, it's kind of like foolish. Like, why is this number like a goal? Like 6 figures, it's like minimum wage almost. But so you had this and you're still unsatisfied. So you talked about your first kind of entry point into self-development. Just curious, like who were kind of some of the guys that brought you in? Who were some of the first people you really latched onto? Because I know we always, at least getting started, we have a few voices or people that we really latch onto. So who was that for you in those beginning years?
Joe Rogan. An episode, I was listening in bed to an episode with Joe Rogan and Duncan Trussell, and they were talking about how this is all fake. And like how we go to these jobs we hate for, a third of our lives, and how that's not the only way to do it. And it was literally, to me, like, wait, what? Like, you can do something else? That was my first like break in awareness of like, okay, there's other things that are out there. People are living the life that I want. I just got to figure out how to do it. That was really the main one. Joe Rogan. I listened to Joe Rogan religiously. I watched every one of his podcasts on YouTube. He just made me think. And then there was the Tony Robbins, then it was like Brendan Burchard and those people. But I would say Joe Rogan initially, then Tony Robbins, as so many people have learned throughout the years.
Yeah. I was not surprised with Tony. I was, be honest, a little shocked that on a personal development question, like Rogan was the one. I mean, I definitely know that there is some of that in him. I go to Rogan, like you said, for more the entertainment stuff. Like he's going to take conversations places. And I know because a lot of times he's, like intoxicated, but he'll take it a place that nobody ever thought. And he'll do it with these high level intellectuals. It's amazing. Like you got one guy on one side of the table, comedian, stoned out of his mind, probably half drunk at the time of recording. Then you got this PhD philosopher, but they're having such an engaging conversations. So that's amazing. So let's unpack kind of, what the beginning days of hyperconscious, radio or hyperconscious podcast was for you, because you talked about like you saw all these people living your dream life. So you knew that possibly it was for you, but it's not like you just wake up one day and say, I'm not going to live my dream life. I know that there was probably, some roadblocks and some detours and pivoting kind of in those early stages. So what did the beginning really look like for you with launching the podcast? Where did the hyperconscious name come up from? I know you briefly kind of explained what it means to you, but what were those early days like, and how did you know that you were on the right path for where you're trying to get to?
The early days were so exciting because you're so unaware of the things that you don't know that you think everything you're doing is right. In this weird way, like looking back, I thought I had it all figured out. I thought it would be like a year and then I'd be interviewing Joe Rogan. I didn't take my habits very seriously. I just thought I didn't know anything about marketing or branding or sales or any of that. So the early days were very much, I think, trying to fake it till I made it. I think I wanted to be known as a podcaster way before I had the skills of a podcaster. That was part of it. And then the other part of it was I was still working a full-time job. So it was like, there was no necessity for me to get good. Right? Like it was kind of like a nightcap thing. Like I get home on Saturday, I have an interview with one of my friends. I'm drinking Guinness at 10 o'clock in the morning with no shirt on for some reason, because I thought that was a good idea. Honestly, it was me modeling Joe Rogan. Genuinely, that's the early hyper-conscious was me thinking that I could do what Joe Rogan was doing without any of the information and having completely different guests on. So I think I thought I was taking it super seriously, but looking back, it was kind of like an elementary pursuit that I was that I was taking on. And then hyperconscious, to me, I think so many people lack awareness. They don't know what they love about themselves. They don't know, their strengths, their unique weaknesses. They don't know why they think the ways they think. They don't know what they're really afraid of. They don't know where their insecurities lie. When you start understanding and becoming more aware of those things, you actually become way more in control of your life. So many people that I have seen, that I have coached, that I have had the opportunity to speak with, wake up, they hit snooze, they wake up again, then they go to work, they come home, and then they hide in comfort for the entire night. And they rinse and repeat until the weekend comes. And then they do the stuff that they get fulfilled by. Like, I don't think that's any way to live. I don't think you should have to work 5 days a week at something you hate in order to get to 2 days where you're already freaking out about the next 5 days. So to me, it was like, how many people are actually aware that there's another way? And how do I show them the other way?
Yeah, I'm going to definitely want to get back to that. I want to go back one more time to the transition from working full time to the podcast. So you were doing both at the beginning, working your full-time gig, and then this was kind of a side gig. Was there a pivotal moment? Was there a moment where you said, I'm jumping out of the airplane without a parachute and I'm going to figure this out? Or had you already gotten the business to a point where it was generating, revenue, at least to what you were making full time?
Not even close. No, I literally, so we had an opportunity. We had an interview with, her name's Catherine Nash, Mini But Mighty on Instagram. She's a friend of ours now. We had an interview with her and we hit it off and we became really good friends with her. And she said, hey, I'm working out, because she lived in Massachusetts. I'm working out. Do you guys want to come with me on Thursday? And I was like, oh, this is awesome. Like, we get to work out with somebody like her. She's, she's super big on Instagram. She's a sweetheart. And my work schedule changed. They told me I was working the day shift. They ended up saying that I had to work the night shift. And I told them no. I said, I'm not coming in. Like, you guys told me I was working the day shift. I have something planned. I can't come in. Like, that was it for me, of like, you guys don't care. You don't care whether or not I'm happy. You don't care whether or not I'm chasing my dreams. Like, you don't care about that at all. So when I quit, I was not making any profit from the podcast. I had no idea how to make a profit from the podcast. Another pivotal moment was Alan and I partnered up. Alan and I went from being a solopreneur to having one of the most entrepreneurial minds that I've ever met in my corner, like, overnight. And that's something I'll always harp on, and I always give credit where credit's due. Alan has shaped my life in so many ways. Having a mentor and somebody in the journey with you is so, so beneficial, especially if their strengths are your weaknesses and vice versa. That was like such an important thing for me. And I don't ever suggest anybody does what I do. Don't leave your job if you don't have any way of income, because you'll end up going back and you might feel defeated and you might stop. So don't do that. I don't ever suggest that. You could try to get a different job. Nowadays, you can freelance, you can drive for Lyft or Uber. Or, there's so many ways out there to make money. But I wouldn't just quit outright and then, assume you're going to make money in 2 or 3 months. Like, I think it's naive and it can be dangerous for sure.
Yeah, I was very fortunate. Back in 2013 was my first dipping my foot into entrepreneurship, and I was almost kind of forced into it. So I was working with a company that I came on board with in a very low paying position, but I knew that they was going to grow into something bigger. So I was told that, stick with us 3 months, 6 months. We're going to bring you into a partnership here. A year and a half go by. We're doing 7 million annual sales, like just crazy, crushing numbers. Kind of get pulled into the office one day and he's like, we're going to go in a different direction. We don't need you here anymore. Luckily, they, ripped apart my non-compete. So the industry that I've been working in was something that I could just basically just go and kind of pivot and start on my own. But I had nothing. I mean, the money that was in the savings account was going to fund the business, but I was very fortunate that month one, we made quite a bit of money. But yeah, that's definitely a scary place to be where like you don't have anything coming in. But yeah, nowadays, I mean, Lyft, Uber, Shipt, eBay, Amazon, Facebook Marketplace, Go Garage Sailing. Like there's, can list off 10 different ways that you can make $2,000 a month, literally working 20 to 30 hours a week. So do that around your schedule and then build the business on the side there. So this is amazing. Great stuff here. I want to go from more of the high level into kind of some of the more tactical stuff that we could really give people. So for you, when you were transitioning from, what you said, living unconsciously to being aware of a future that you could create for yourself, what were some of the, call them strategies or tactics or things that you learned through this journey? Maybe you picked up from Alan or listening to, Rogan's podcast or Robbins back in the day, or Bouchard. What were some of the real, like, tangible stuff? So let's say we got a guy out there right now. He knows the quotes, like he's following me, he's following you, he's following, some of the bigger guys. So his page is literally like, if you scroll his Instagram, like it's motivation after motivation after motivation. Yet he's still, like you said, wakes up, hits the snooze button, wakes up again, hits the snooze button. Then he like rolls out of bed, and then he's like, screaming at his wife first thing in the morning. And then he's flicking the person off, driving to work. And then he's sitting in the cubicle for 8 hours a day. And basically while he's there, he's on Facebook and Pornhub 90% of the time. And he gets about 10 minutes of work done. Then he drives home, stops at the bar, has a drink before he gets home, to only yell at his wife even more, pop himself on the couch for 3 hours, watch the game, then rolls into bed at 1 o'clock in the morning, rinse, repeat, recycle. So that's the guy. Not that person is listening. He may be listening right now, but you get what I'm saying. So he knows that there is an inspiration out there. He knows he could quote the quote cards, but what does he need to do? And what did Kevin do to pull himself out of that rut?
I think he's got to realize that knowledge is merely potential. Like, without action, it's a backpack with stuff in it. Like, you have to use it, right? You can have all the quotes in the world. Quotes don't pay the bills unless you're an author, and they do. So I would say a couple things. Number one, people say all the time, like, oh, I'm not motivated to go to work. I'm not motivated to do this. I wouldn't be either. It's time to find something that you like better. Again, it doesn't have to be your dream job. Maybe it's not, but we're so focused on like the problem that we're not focused on the solution. Okay. So if this gentleman in this example was not happy with his job, what's one thing that we can do today to move towards happiness? Like, there's no fulfillment there. There's no fulfillment in the things that you're doing. So you don't even feel like you're living a life on purpose. You feel like you're just living a life, and you have to disconnect from that. So I've learned so many things. One of the biggest things I've learned is the biggest difference between the person you are and the person you want to be is your habits, bar nothing. Like, show me somebody who's uber successful, and I guarantee, unless it's some stroke of luck or circumstance, they have extraordinary habits. So I would say this: sit down today. If you're watching this, if you're listening to this, break your life into three categories: health, wealth, and love. What is 3 things that you can do every day that will take you closer to your dreams? So I'll take you through some of mine just as an example.
Is it 3 per category or 1 in each category?
3 per category. Yeah. And honestly, this can get, like, I have 16 things that I do every day, right? I have 16 things that I do every single day, Saturday, Sunday, doesn't matter. These are the things that I've decided that are most.
You've added 4 to that list since the last time you talked about this, because I heard you talk about 12.
I probably did.
Let's hear the 16.
So I have 2 members of my team who do the podcast stuff, right? So 1 and 2 is make sure that they are all set. Post on social media, post on my story, do yoga, do mobility, weight train. Then I have track my finances, track podcast listens, daily gratitudes with my girlfriend. All right, hold on. So that's 10. I got 6 more. What else do I do? Journal. So that's 11. Hold on. Did I say yoga?
You did say yoga and mobility.
Meditation. So that's 12. Prospect. I have to make a connection with somebody at least once a day. I also add to a prospect list, right? So every day I talk to somebody, but I also add somebody that I want to build a relationship with. So that is, I think that's 14. Engage in our private Facebook group. That's 15. And then the one I'm forgetting, I'm going to really be mad at myself for, most likely. But there's one more. I don't remember it off the top of my head.
So these are for you over the course of a 24-hour day. Yep. Do you have a morning routine? Because I think for a lot of guys, it's like you talked about it with rolling over and hitting snooze. I feel so many people start their day in defense. They start the day behind the 8 ball. I coach every one of my guys, like the value in the routine, the morning routine. Like we need to kind of set the perspective for how we're going to go view the world. Like I think that's one of the biggest things somebody can do to change their lives is literally have a series of small victories, accomplishments, and then rewarding yourself for those accomplishments first thing in the morning. You know, within the first 5 minutes, I've gotten up when I said I was going to get up. I've made the bed, I've brushed my teeth, and I've done something physical, literally within the first 5 minutes of being awake. Physical is like a lot of times it's just plopping down, doing 20, 30, 40 burpees, just kind of get the blood flowing. But I have those 4 victories. So within 5 minutes, I've accomplished 4 wins. Dopamine hit, dopamine, you know, talk about that on the addiction side of things. But out of that, you know, you gave us the 16 in 24 hours. Do you have a set of morning routines that you like to follow?
So my morning routine has shifted a lot because I've been way more focused on sleep. I was the guy who ran on 4 or 5 hours of sleep religiously for years. And then I realized what that was doing to the long-term, you know, brain functioning and, you know, all the risks that I was putting myself toward. So I've switched that, but my most bulletproof morning routine that I ever had, and I've shifted a little bit of it, but up at 4 a.m. in the living room with my AirPods in and a book playing at 4:05, on the ground doing foam rolling and mobility for 35 to 40 minutes. I would journal things. I wouldn't look at my phone until I got back. So those were the first like 4 to 5 things that I did. Now it's a little bit different. I do yoga in the morning because my mobility has been a little bit off. I always lift first thing in the morning. I'm always listening to some, you know, something, but it's not as rigid as it was because for me, you know, for an example tonight, Alan and I are on a call with one of our mentors until 7 p.m. Right? I'm not going to get home until 7:30 or 8. I want to spend time with my girlfriend. So if I'm sleeping, you know, from 9 to 4, that doesn't leave much time for me to connect with my girlfriend. So for instance, I might sleep until, you know, a little bit later tomorrow and then run it. So for me, and this is something that I always tell people, I want you to be rigid when it comes to your discipline and consistency, but you should be flexible to make sure it actually fits into your life and it's sustainable. The best workout, the best routine, the best diet is the one that you can stick to sustainably and it gets you the results that you want.
Yeah, fluidity in your routine was something Jake Kelfer talked about on the last episode. And I have done this for years now. I'd never heard it kind of framed in the context that he said it. But yeah, it's like understand, have your vision, have your goals for where you're going. And then it should be a reverse engineering process that gets you back down to your habits and routines. It should never be, let me build my routine and days and habits and then hope that it gets me to my goal. It should actually work in the reverse way. I hear you talk a lot about why power. This is kind of one of your big kind of terminologies that you use and talk about a bit. Can you talk to us about what why power means to you and how you build that into your business, into your coaching as well?
Yeah. So I always use this example on stage. People talk about motivation. I talk about why power. They're different for a couple of reasons. Number one, if I walk up to you, Frank, and I say, there's a $20 bill in that building over there, that building's on fire. So be careful. You're most likely not going to be very motivated to go into that building for $20. But if I walk up to you and grab you by the shoulder and say, Frank, your family, they're in that building over there. You're not motivated, right? You're inspired. That's your family is your why power. You'll do anything for them. I always use that example because it's hard to motivate yourself to do things that you hate. That's why so many people are struggling. It's not about motivation. It's about alignment. You're not aligned with what you want. So there's too much resistance. Okay. So I always say that. For me, it's my girlfriend. My girlfriend is one of my biggest why powers. I tear up every time I talk about her. I will do it here, I'm sure. The fact that she believes in me as much as she does, the fact that she supports this, the fact that she understands why I'm tired and why I don't do a lot of things that like regular people do. Like I don't have time. I'm busy. I'm doing all these things. She understands that I get up at 4 a.m. and wake her up every time I get up. Like I can't fail. With her in my corner, I can't fail. I'll die before I fail. And I mean that. I'm not saying that with ego. I will die before I fail this. She is one of my main why powers. I want to give her the best life possible. She doesn't expect it. She doesn't even want it, but I want that for her. And the other thing is when you get messages on your phone from people who say, hey, your podcast changed my life, or your coaching changed my life, there's no going back from that. Like, that is all the why power I need. The fact that a kid from a small town in Massachusetts who had no idea what he wanted to do with his life is impacting people in, at this point, 50 or 60 countries. Like, sometimes I have to pinch myself, Frank, and say, like, wow, this is my life. That right there, that's why power. I never have to go punch a clock again as long as I do this right. Like, that's why power. That's why power.
That's amazing. What's your girl's name?
Taryn,
you gotta keep her here. That's powerful stuff that you shared with her. On the message, kind of the testimonial or review or people reaching out to you. I was just interviewed literally right before we hopped on here. I was being interviewed by somebody else, and he asked me a very similar question. But do you have a testimonial or review or somebody that's reached out, like, that really kind of sticks out to you that you could share with us? Maybe not the exact details or how you met this person or how they found you, and just kind of share with us, like, one of those, real impactful stories.
Yeah. A young lady left one the other day, and is impactful as the review is, it's her story. It's like the reviews are great, but the DMs you get from people saying, I left an abusive relationship. I was literally sleeping on a mattress on the floor with an abusive boyfriend who wouldn't let me leave the house. And now she's single and has her own business and is crushing it. Like, she basically said that I have never met two more down to earth, genuine men that are not only genuine in front of the public eye, but genuine behind the scenes. And they genuinely want what's best for other people. They're selfless, and they do everything with love. I had the benefit of coaching this young lady for a while. And it's like, I think, Frank, a lot of people want to be successful. And I love that. But Alan and I, from the beginning of this journey, said character over everything. Character over everything. I won't interview you if I don't like your character. I won't coach you if I don't like your character. You won't speak on our stages. You won't be in our community. For me, it's character over everything, because the closer you get to somebody, the closer you get to the truth. You know more about me now than you did when you researched me. I could have been BSing all those interviews, right? But when this goes off and we're not recording anymore and nothing about me changes, you'll know, oh, he does have the character that he says. That is, I don't ever want somebody to meet me and be disappointed. I don't ever want somebody to say, oh, I thought he was going to be like this in person, ever. That is like my nightmare.
Wow. Sometimes, and just hearing you, talk about this, like, I think so many times, because I've lived in this kind of space, and, like, I've been consuming, there's a couple hundred books behind me. I've read, I don't know, close to 500 books in the last 10 years. And, podcasts, I'm just like you. Like, I was a connoisseur before I got into the business and into the game. But it's like, I've spent my life, like, living in this, that it, like, to me, this is normal. So when I have conversations with people that don't know me from the podcast, or, maybe aren't in one of my influencer circles, or not in one of the masterminds that I'm in, and we kind of start talking about just daily routines and just stuff that I enjoy, I'll talk about it at McDonald's with somebody about, oh, what's your morning routine? And they're like, what are you talking about? Like, I think I take it for granted, because, like, my life is being surrounded by people just like you. But yeah, I do this for exact same reason. Like, I motivated hell of a lot of people. Through Frank Rich Fitness, which was started in late 2015. We've transformed thousands and thousands of guys' lives, bigger biceps, shredded abs, contests, bodybuilding, competitions, trophies, all this stuff. Like, I was motivating these guys to change the way they looked. But I was using motives. I was using tactics and strategies to help push them through the pain. Where you talked about the inspiration, like, now I'm living in the spirit. Like who I am right here talking with you is the exact same person I'm going to have when I'm having a conversation at the gym. There's no difference in the way that I operate, because I'm living through the spirit. I'm inspired to now create a superhuman life. I'm inspired to help other people create their own superhuman lives. So I love the way you kind of broke down the difference between motivation and inspiration there as well. I've heard you talk about this quite a bit, and I wanted to make sure I at least kind of get your story from it, because you shared it willingly on handful of other podcasts. So I wouldn't do justice to our audience if I didn't address it here, with the fact that our mission is driven to help men break free from porn addiction. So you've talked about it. You've talked about your journey, your struggle. why did you bring it up numerous times without it ever being asked? What have you noticed in your life? How has it changed and transformed once you were able to remove porn from your life as well?
So one of the reasons I bring it up willingly is because I don't think most people have the, I don't want to say guts, but it's a very rare question. Look, what's the joke of like, you know, billions of people watch porn, but I've never met another guy who does, because everybody hides it.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody hides it. It's like, oh, okay, I guess you're another guy who doesn't watch it, right? So one of the reasons was this: as the cell phones become more and more widespread, two things happen. You have easier access to porn. You also have easier access to erectile dysfunction pills. Porn and erectile dysfunction go hand in hand. That when I saw that and realized you don't even need a prescription anymore, you can go on one of these apps, get it discreetly shipped to your house, and you don't have to stop the problem. Then in my mind, it was like, I want to be the guy who talks about this, because I know not a lot of guys are vulnerable enough to do it. And it wrecked a lot of my life. It wrecked a lot of my life. When you're 16 years old and you can't have sex with your girlfriend, like, that's not good. That's not, maybe 18, not 16, but 18. Like, that's not normal. That doesn't feel good. You're wondering what's wrong with you, right? So for me, I just wanted to be, I want to be transparent, and I want to be authentic. And I want, when you're vulnerable, it allows other people to talk to you at the same level. They realize, oh, that's okay here. It goes from, this is my problem, to this is something that we share together and we can get through together. And somebody has to break the ice. And I think I'm just comfortable with it because I've done 500, almost 600 podcasts at this point between ours and being on others. So it was like, look, I will own this because I want to help. The same reason I talk about suicide. Like, yeah, that sucks, right? I'm not proud of it. I'm not proud of that. But I do think that it's something that needs to be talked about more. And until people start talking about it more, it's not gonna happen.
Amen, brother. It's exactly why I do what I do. You know what you said there, like, billions of men are addicted, but you've never met another man that's addicted to porn. It's like, I talk about this quite a bit, and there's the 3 A's of pornography that make it so difficult with, as far as, curing the addiction. It's accessible. You talked about it's literally in our pocket 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's affordable. 90% of porn these days is free, and I don't understand the ones that actually pay for it. But then it's anonymous, and that's where you talked about it. No other addiction in the world are you literally going to do by yourself 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If you're an alcoholic, you're drinking in bars, you're drinking with other people. If you're a drug addict, you got to go buy the drugs from another person, and then a lot of times you're doing it with somebody else. If you're a gambling addict, yeah, you may be gambling at home, but I think most gambling addicts are in the casino pulling the slot machine, watching the things spin. If you're shopping, I guess you could shop online by yourself. So maybe that's another one. But yeah, it's like, it's this addiction that just lives in isolation. And the more you stay isolated, and the more that you live in the isolation, and more you live in the guilt and shame and don't have the conversations, the more it just feeds and grows and grows and grows. And then it's like you just layer shame on top of shame on top of shame, never getting out of it. So, brother, I appreciate you for talking about it on other podcasts, because I think that is where it needs to start. We need to see men that have their lives together, that have physiques, have businesses, are doing amazing things, but then can say, you know what, at one point, this had its hands wrapped around me because it is bigger than me, and we need to have the conversations about it. So I just really do, like I said, I appreciate you for being open and talking about that.
It's so important. It's so important. I didn't know I was addicted. I thought it was normal.
Because it's taught, every guy is doing this. It's taught, oh, where do you want to go learn about sex? Just go watch this. Like, yeah, for me, with the mission that I'm on, and, really the battle I'm going to be fighting for the next 37 years of my life. Like, I'm facing something that society is saying it's just okay. It's a part of life. It's a part of society. And I'm sitting there telling you, no, it's destroying brains. It's destroying men. It's destroying relationships. And when you add all 3 of those together, it's destroying the world. But yeah, that 18 years old dude with erectile dysfunction, like I when I started to hear some of the statistics, I mean, I was in my 30s when I really started to kind of wrap my head around it. But hearing that there's boys and young men out there that are struggling with this, it's like, we got to fix this. We got to have the conversations. I got to continue to do the work that I'm that I'm doing. Because it's scary. And then what it does to minds, young minds as well, how it literally rewires and reshapes the way we view and see the world. So appreciate you again, man, for opening up about that. So you guys are, approaching 500 episodes with Next Level University, which was Hyperconscious Radio. Then you talked again about, maybe another 100 episodes or so. What are, maybe top 3, top 5 lessons, takeaways from your show, maybe some highlights, guests, or just in general, what are some of the, the biggest takeaways that you've gotten from doing this thing, 500 episodes?
So we've had some amazing guests on. I think the biggest lesson that I've learned from guests is adversity is guaranteed. What you do with it is not. I mean, Anthony Trucks, former NFL player, Ninja Warrior, literally had to chase chickens, and he slept in a chicken coop and licked the bottom of people's shoes until his tongue bled. And now he is, one of the best speakers in the world, one of the best.
I got Anthony coming on next week.
Dude, such a great dude, man. But and genuinely, we've spent time with him behind the scenes. Like, he was in our hotel room for an interview. Went to In-N-Out Burger with him. Great guy. Like, he's the same guy that you see on stage, right? Like that. And honestly, like, a negative side, a lot of people aren't who they say they are. We've had people on the show that portray themselves as something, and when you get them going, they're not the same person, and their character, I'll just put it this way. When it comes to social media, perception matters way more than character. It just does. And that's something that we've learned. Now, we haven't had that happen often. We've learned our lesson enough to make sure that we vet our guests, and we have to have a genuine pull. But that has been very, very something we're aware of for sure. And then I would say, in terms of our show, honestly, I think you can get good at anything. Like, I think you can get good at anything if you set your mind to it, you spend enough time. When I started this, I didn't anticipate doing 500 episodes. I didn't know we'd be interviewing the people, or mentored by David Meltzer and Evan Carmichael. Like, those are my mentors. That's mind blowing to me. So even more than just the podcast, if you start a train, whether that's a train of positive impact or change or influence or whatever it may be, and you keep that train rolling, you have no idea what your life's going to look like. You can't. You're not aware enough to understand what your life will look like. Again, 5 years ago, I had never read a book on personal development. Now people interview me so I can talk about it. That's only 5 years. And like, I wasn't taking it seriously all 5, right? Maybe like the last 3 years, I've been real serious about it. Things can change. Just going back to the quote you said at the beginning, like a 10 years is a long time. That is a long time. You can be a completely different person in a completely different place. And for me, the podcast shows that. 500 reps, right? Like 500 reps of speaking, of interviewing, of coming up with topics. If you think I'm a relatively good speaker, that's why. I just have more reps than other people do. That's like a giant takeaway. The people who do it the longest usually become the best. The problem is you don't see them when they suck. Because
you were gifted with a little bit of a voice, if anything, but yeah, everything else you said you've developed over time. Dude, I think that really just kind of brings the entire conversation back together, because at the beginning you said the fact that I'm sitting here lets you know that you can too. And I mean, my life is a very similar, example and story to this. I mean, I was the unconfident, insecure, out of weight kid that didn't like to talk to people. Now I make a living helping people transform their lives through fitness while talking on podcasts and videos. That's basically my job. I flip a camera on and I talk. I flip a headset on and I talk. I have calls where I talk, but I was a kid that, like, when I was in a room with people, like, I was the one that sat in the corner, didn't want to say anything. But as I started to dive into the things that were bothering me, you talked about that, like facing your fears, facing your darkness. As I began to dive into those things, I realized that, like, my true happiness, my true fulfillment came on the other side of all those challenges that I had to face and overcome. So this has been incredibly inspiring, brother. I appreciate you so much. We're going to wrap it up here in a minute, but I want to give you the opportunity to direct people to you, to the podcast, to the site, to the coaching, all the different things. So where's Kevin and Alan hanging out at most, and where do people, if they want to get more of you, where can they find you?
The best place to get me is on Instagram at NeverQuitKid. That is the best place. I respond to all my DMs. And then Next Level University, we're on every platform that you can imagine. We have a YouTube channel that has every single one of our videos. We do 5 episodes a week, and we are planning on doing this forever until I'm in a wheelchair and I have to wheel myself around with a microphone. This is something that we're committed to doing. Like, we want to change the world, and this is something that we're going to do consistently. If you're looking for mindset or business coaching, we do that as well. And Alan and I just rolled out a new program called Next Level Podcast Solutions, where we help people actually make money and turn their podcasts into businesses. Again, we didn't really have a business model to follow when we started this. And we've been doing this for 3.5, 4 years now. And now our podcast is our business. This is our job. This is what we do. And we want to help other people, create the opportunity to do that as well.
Yeah, maybe not a perfect question for the podcast, but just curious personally, I could have asked you this offline, but your guys' podcasting business model, like, is this going to be more of kind of a front end lead generation to where you sell other services on the back end? Or are you actually monetizing the podcast from a advertising promotional standpoint?
So it's more for us, it's more lead gen. You can do it with ads, but honestly, and I've said this since the beginning, I don't want to do it that way. Yeah. I don't want to do it. The lifetime value of a client is way more valuable than most of the people are going to give you in terms of ads. And the other thing, and this is what happens. You build relationships with your listeners by talking to them one-on-one. They tell people about their show and you get way more listeners, and you're able to impact more people, change more lives, and make more money. It's a win-win-win. People don't like listening to ads. They don't.
Yeah, most of the stuff being pirated out there, it's like, it's the same, 10 products on, 1,000 different podcasts. So you've heard it once, you've heard it, 1,000 times. You talked about doing this forever. Just curious with you as a Joe Rogan fan. I mean, you may be at the point like 40 years in the future where you guys just have little chips in your brain, and all your listeners download another little chip, and then they just get your thoughts as you think them. You don't even need to record it anymore.
I'm down. Every morning I write at least 5,000 episodes. At least we're going to hit at least 5,000 episodes of the show. Guys. And that's a whole nother thing. If we ever do it again, we'll go through the journaling. I have relationship check-ins and habits that'll benefit people. So we just scratched the surface today.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to get Alan on, and then maybe we'll get you guys back on for dual episode. Maybe make this kind of like a big, trilogy of episodes. But guys, we're going to plug in the podcast. We're going to plug in the Instagram at the Never Quit Kid. I just started following him not too long ago because we connected for this, putting out amazing content. I mean, you heard the energy here today. You heard the content, the value. So it's the same stuff over there. So Alan, man, I just want to acknowledge you, man, for everything that you're doing, for taking that leap 3 years ago, realizing that there was a bigger purpose in your life, that there were bigger dreams and goals that you could aspire. The world is a better place because of those moments. And although you had to face some darkness, like, we are all grateful that you were able to get through that. And we're extremely grateful for Alan for being that mentor early on for you. We always wrap up every single interview with one final question. So I know I shared a little bit with you about the genesis of this podcast, how it was really a result of my own transformation, me overcoming quite a bit of adversity and really facing the darkest demon in my life. And then overcoming that, I felt compelled to share this story with the world. But for me, I always talk about Superhuman life as more of a belief system than anything else. So, I mean, we didn't talk about it here, but I am a man of faith, and my faith is number one in my life. And it wasn't until I was 35 did that really come into fruition for me. So for me, living a superhuman life is understanding that I was created for a purpose, and then taking every single day to bring me closer to living out and fulfilling that purpose. That's what I mean when I talk about living a superhuman life. But I always like to get the guest perspective and take on it. So how would Kevin define living a superhuman life?
Easily become the best version of yourself. That's it. When it comes to health, wealth, and love, if you can rest your head every day and say, I did the best I could, I left it all out there, and tomorrow I plan on bettering my best, that to me, that's how you become a true superhuman.
Awesome. Incredible, guys. You heard it here. Health, wealth, and love. Get yourself a series of things that you can accomplish on a daily basis to help take you out of living unconsciously to living a next level life of hyper consciousness. Kevin, We appreciate you, brother. Love you so much. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. If you haven't done so yet and you want to help us grow this mission and grow this show, you can help us in two different ways. First off, if you're new and you haven't done so yet, make sure to hit that subscribe button and also leave us a 5-star rating and review right there on Apple, whatever podcast platform you are listening to. And secondly, guys, we need your help in growing this and getting this podcast into more people's ears and eyes. So if there's somebody in your life that could benefit from Kevin's story or any of the stories that we've had on this show, make sure to share this episode with them. But that's it, guys. For Kevin from Next Level University, Frank Rich, we love you guys, and we'll see you next week.